it's a book about his time in Iraq. So he came to us. I'm like, what? What are you going to say that's different than the other 5 million books out there that people have written in the last 25 years about Iraq and Afghanistan? What's going to be different? He's like, well, here's the deal. Everyone writes about the war and the death and the destruction and the PTSD. I didn't experience that. I was there for 18 months as a lieutenant, a platoon leader. I was put in charge of a neighborhood. None of my guys died. None of my guys got hurt. We built trust in the community. We built security in the community, and we helped them financially as well so they could build businesses. And that was my experience. So when I read these books that say the other thing, I got to imagine I wasn't the only one, and this is the only book that shows that progress. And that's what I want to say. I was like, well, I mean, I don't read many of those either, so let's do it.
Today's episode sponsor is Aditon, creators of Aditon Operations Kit, the military's go-to software for personnel and equipment accountability. AOK goes where you do, any network, anytime, any place. I got to know Aditon's co-founders, James and JJ, several years ago. They are former Army NCOs who have years of experience in the tech industry. They understand that most military jobs aren't performed behind a computer desk. Personnel and operations are distributed, but accountability of property is paramount to making mission. That's where Logi, AOK's equipment management software, comes into play. Formerly known as 92X, Logi is a next generation of equipment management for the military. Logi offers unrivaled features for military teams on the go. Ingest and digitize your primary and sub-hand receipts. Generate and share sub-hand receipts and DA forms with your team in just a few clicks. Capture photos, tags, and notes across your team to build context on the state of equipment. Get easy on-the-go access to critical property records. Logi is custom built for the modern military professional. It gives you your valuable time back so you can get back to the mission at hand at home or in the field. Whether you're doing monthly inventories or preparing for deployment, Logi is your pocket property book, giving you real-time visibility into equipment status and mission readiness. Logi is currently in use across the U.S. Army Special Forces, and it's expanding. For a limited time, listeners of the From the Green Notebook podcast can try out Logi for free. Visit aditonppc.com/FTGN-Logi to get started. That's ADYTONPBC.com/FTGN-LOGE. How do I know what I think until I see what I say?
The Green Notebook, carried by military leaders around the world. Within those pages are sweat, tears, triumphs, and the hard-won lessons of life. Lessons worth sharing. Each week, the team dives into the notebooks of military leaders, business professionals, authors, athletes and coaches, and entertainers to share lessons and help you lead with the best version of yourself.
Welcome to another episode of From the Green Notebook. I'm your host, Joe Byerly, and today we're diving into the Green Notebook of Randy Surles, Army veteran, former Ranger and Green Beret, and the story coach who helped me turn an idea into a 220-page manuscript. Now, even if you have zero desire to ever write a book, I want you to stick around for this one because this conversation is a peek behind the curtain of the writing process. It's an inside look at what actually goes into shaping an idea, refining a message, and turning rough thoughts into something worth reading. If you've ever picked up a book and thought, how did they do this? This episode will give you a whole new appreciation for what authors really go through. And if you've ever thought about writing a book, maybe a memoir, maybe a leadership book, maybe the story you've been carrying around for years, this episode is especially for you. Because here's the truth, writing a book isn't just about putting words on paper. It's about clarity. It's about knowing who you're writing for, and it's about willing to answer some uncomfortable questions before you ever type chapter 1 or no shit, there I was. So Randy is part of the Story Grid world. He was trained under Shawn Coyne, who is a longtime editor of Steven Pressfield, worked with Steve on Gates of Fire and The War of Art. And Randy has worked with dozens of military veterans to help them tell better stories. But what makes this conversation different is that Randy and his partner Laura were my book coaches. They were the ones asking hard questions when I didn't have clear answers. They were the ones pushing back when my message was fuzzy. And they were the ones who helped me understand that in nonfiction, the reader is the hero, and the book only works if the reader changes by the end. And so we talk about the hero's journey and why it's more than just a storytelling framework. It's a map that mirrors our careers and our lives. We talk about why most books never sell more than a few hundred copies and what reality should mean for your motivations. We explore the difference between traditional, hybrid, and self-publishing, and we dig into something most aspiring authors underestimate: marketing, platform, and the long game of building an audience before you ever release a book. But at the center of this episode is a deeper question. Why are you writing in the first place? Is it to say that you wrote a book, to chase the bestseller list, or is it to serve one specific reader, to help them see something more clearly than they did before? So whether you're a veteran thinking about telling your story, a leader trying to sharpen your message, or someone quietly wrestling with the idea that you think you might have a book inside of you, this conversation will give you a realistic and encouraging look at what the process actually requires. So grab your green notebooks and please welcome to the show, Randy Surles.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, Randy, for listeners, Randy and I have known each other, I think since January of 22. I'd gotten this idea for a book concept, and I reached out to a guy named Shawn Coyne, who's a past guest of the show. And if you're not familiar with his name, Shawn was the editor for Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield, and the two of those guys worked together for decades on Steve's project, to include the other famous book that he wrote, The War of Art. And I had this book concept, and he said, let me connect you with Randy. I think you guys would work well together. And and then that was a while ago. So it was about over 3 years ago now. So it's been a minute.
Yeah, no, I think he like tends to push me off on the military guys because he thinks we'll think alike, a lot alike. And then of course I got Laura, who's the non-military person who kind of brings common sense to us sometimes when we're going off on our military tangents. And she's like, okay, I don't understand that acronym or something like that.
Well, yeah, let's back your story up a little bit. Could you talk a little bit about your before career, before you got into writing? Just a brief synopsis of your military background.
Sure. So let's see. I went to college for a year. Wasn't at the right time for me, but I always liked to read. And my family, my dad worked for Ross Perot. I lived in Iran, Holland, England. I graduated high school at American school in England before going to college. And every time, there's lots of traveling involved in that. And back in the old days, and traveling around Europe on a train and stuff. And I'd go 2 hours from my house to school, to high school and middle school every day by train, bus, tram, and tube. And I'd read, and I loved to read. And I always thought I might be a writer someday. I don't know. And then I decided to join the military, which is something I thought about after high school, though no one ever recruited me. So I joined the military. I wanted to do something challenging, so I went straight in the Rangers, which was, except for the SEALs, the only special ops you could join back then, right out of the gate. Did that for 4 years. Jumped into Panama during Operation Pineapple Express. Then I went to the Q course, I was in the Green Berets for the last, 25 years of my career. And, mostly South America, Middle East after 9/11. The last 4 years of my career were in Africa and Europe. And got my MFA in creative writing through the tuition assistance program. And I said, I'm going to be a writer. And then I was like, but I probably won't make money for a while. So what am I going to do in the meantime? And I was hiking through Spain on the Camino de Santiago. It's like 500 miles, 15 to 20 miles a day or whatever. And I got an email from a newsletter I subscribed to, which was Shawn Coyne's email, because I was listening to his podcast at the time. and it said, "Hey, we're training people in my methodology, the story grid, and we're going to make editors out of you." I'm like, "Oh, that sounds great!" And it was right during my terminal leave, and it was about the cost of what my leave I was turning in. It was like the universe talking to me. So I went to Nashville for a week or so, and then there was like 6 months of follow up work that I had to turn in, and then check the block. He certified me after I turned everything in, and the good thing is he started giving me clients immediately. So that was nice because that's the hardest part of this job is continuously finding clients. Um, nowadays, I've been doing this for 7, 8 years now, not including the time when I was doing my MFA and writing then. So I've ghostwritten and edited 70 some books, probably, nonfiction, fiction. Probably over 50% of my clients are military. They find me because I'm military and we're like-minded. Or they're writing something military, like a military thriller of some sort. And so they find me through Google or word of mouth. And I worked with Scott Mann on Operation Pineapple Express, which was a New York Times bestseller. I helped co-write a book called The Wise Investor, which was a fiction book about saving money and finance. And I've probably ghostwritten 15 memoirs, military memoirs for military members now. So that's kind of where I am. And then when Shawn connected us, we were trying to figure out what you wanted to do, and it just kind of worked out right. And I actually hadn't heard of your podcast at the time, and then but everyone else had, like all my friends, especially the officers, like, yeah, the Green Notebook, yeah, I know it. And I was like, crap, I need to start listening to this. So I subscribed to your newsletter, started listening to it to kind of figure out what your tone and vibe was. And then I think we spent a year on that thing, didn't we? A year and a half?
Yeah, it was a year and a half, and I want to get into that a little bit because I think the process I went through with you and Laura was absolutely amazing, and I feel like what you guys pulled 220 pages out of an idea. Um, you pulled those pages out kicking and screaming, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I'm really proud of this project that will eventually see the light of day in its totality. A lot of people have read it in its serialized form, but the compilation itself. But we talked about Shawn Coyne and we talked about his method, the story grid method. So I'd like to start there because I think it's a really important thing for people that I think we take for granted a lot of times, that a story just flows, especially when you're talking about nonfiction writing and then people talking about memoirs or biographies. But what Shawn has discovered and has kind of put together and has used is this template for how to tell a story, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. So could you just describe a little bit of that?
So yeah, I think his I think most of his work is with fiction, and so this was primarily when the came out like 15 years ago, the Story Grid. It was primarily for fiction, and it was oriented around the genres of fiction. And then later on, he analyzed Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point, kind of moved parts of it into addressing nonfiction. But if you're doing narrative nonfiction, you're basically writing fictional type scenes. You're writing action scenes. You're writing in the now scenes, which are what fiction books have. And so I've applied this to, I've applied it to my friends. They're like, "Hey, you're a writer, you're an editor. Can you look at my son's FBI application?" I was like, "Sure, man." And then I'll look at it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, let's rearrange this." I'll apply he calls them the five commandments. Shawn calls them the five commandments. So I'm just like, let's just move this around, kind of like hook the FBI guy, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll send it back. And I did this with my son's college applications too. And I don't know if it functions, but it seems to work for everybody regardless. It's just the five commandments are kind of a global story. Like, hey, in a couple sentences, what's your book about? What starts the book? What starts the hero on his heroic journey? What is his all is lost moment, and how is this getting resolved? And that's where the five commandments come in to help you figure that out for the whole book. And then let's break that down into acts. A lot of people talk about a 3-act or a 4-act, either way, whatever method you want to use. The story grid now uses a 4-act, but let's break down hey, how does the reader, or how does the protagonist, stumble upon his story goal and take that step on the journey? How is he changing the way he thinks to get what he wants and understand what he wants? How is he fighting through all the obstacles in that 3rd act? And the 4th act, how is he finally winning against all obstacles and gaining what the goal that he set out to get? And then on top of that, you can take the 5 commandments and address each scene in each chapter, which is kind of where we went with you. Like, hey, what are we doing here? And you had the great idea, and I know we're going to talk about it in a minute, but we couldn't figure out how to put it together. You're like, I want to do this and this and this. It's like we beat it up for like a month, I think. And Laura, my partner, was a big piece of that, where she's just like, what about this? And she kept asking you questions. She's like, stop it. I knew in your head, you're like, I had an idea and now you tore it apart. And she's really good at that, about getting to the guts of what you want to write about. And you had to go, and really we took a pause because I think you were smoked. And then you just started sending me things, and I started sending them back, kind of like, hey, I think if you said it this way, it'd be more compelling. And then somehow we started down the road of writing the book that you got. But yeah, I think Shawn invented this story grid system, but it's a gathering of ideas that have been around for a while that he saw in 30 years of editing, and he kind of assembled into a system. And he's got the Story Grid University, for lack of a better word, where he mentors people from writing scene to writing short stories to writing novellas, and then novels. I'm also a contractor for Story Grid University right now too, and so is Laura. And he just believes in writing good stuff, and so does Tim, his partner. And everybody there, there's 15 or 20 people that he's trained to work for him, and we all just want people to write good stuff. That's basically the baseline of his system.
Yeah, and you talk about these stories, or this methodology being around forever, and he just kind of he framed it up in a way that a person could take what they've written or their idea and fit it into these bins and develop a story. And it's built around the idea of the hero's journey, which is the book that I ended up working on. And for folks listening, like we take it for granted because we just don't pay attention to it, but it's everywhere. It's this idea that you have a protagonist who begins stuck. Something happens that launches them on this journey. They go through all these ordeals and obstacles trying to reach their goal. And then eventually they reach it and bring that goal, that gift, back to their community and make it better. And if in terms of like military folks, if you think about it, like that is the actual structure for, I would argue, every single one of our careers. It follows that same story arc, which is, I think it's great that you're working with veterans now to help them tell their stories.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I interviewed, just in the last month or two, I've interviewed like 5 people with their memoirs. And the first question Laura and I ask are, who are we talking to? And what do you want to do for those people? Because your book, if you're writing a book that's not for you, like people can write memoirs about themselves and it's for their friends and family, and it's just everything they want to put in the book, and that's fine. But if you're writing a book with purpose and meaning for the world and to help people, how are you going to help those people? And identifying, like, once you finish your book and it's sitting on the shelf or it's sitting in Amazon, where is, when you picture the person that's going to pick up this book, I mean, one of the best ways you can do this is like, picture your biggest fan buying your book, loving it, and then writing you a fan mail and saying, this is what I love about your book, right? And if you can do that before you write the book, then that's the aim of the book. That's the goal of the book. Let's get there, because that's what you want to do with the reader, right? And you have to picture, like, where was that reader in his life, his or her life, before he picked up the book? What was he missing? What did he not understand that you're going to explain and elaborate on in your book, so that at the end they have a whole new perspective on whatever you're talking about. So Dan Pace came to us. He's one of the authors we work with. He was a enlisted guy, then he was an officer in the regular army, then he went SF eventually. He came out with a book, which beautiful cover. It's called "It Was What It Was," and it's a book about his time in Iraq. So he came to us. I'm like, what are you going to say that's different than the other 5 million books out there that people have written in the last 25 years about Iraq and Afghanistan? What's going to be different? He's like, well, here's the deal. Everyone writes about the war and the death and the destruction and the PTSD. I didn't experience that. I was there for 18 months as a lieutenant, a platoon leader. I was put in charge of a neighborhood. None of my guys died. None of my guys got hurt. We built trust in the community. We built security in the community, and we helped them financially as well, so they could build businesses. And that was my experience. So when I read these books that say the other thing, I got to imagine I wasn't the only one, and this is the only book that shows that progress. And that's what I want to say. I was like, well, I mean, I don't read many of those either, so let's do it. And then he marketed the crap out of it with his own ads and stuff, did his own research, and he's done really well. He's earned back double on what he invested, like paid me to help him get there. And so, but you had to get there. You're like, what are you saying different? Like, what are you putting on the paper that's different? And so you're talking about, I thought the war in Iraq was all death and destruction, and, Baghdad was blowing up every night and stuff like that. But you were in Baghdad, you were in a neighborhood in Baghdad, and it wasn't like that there. And so I'm telling you, there's other pieces of the war, and there was good things that happened there.
Yeah. Is that like an important, I guess, step to take, for folks like that are like, I want to tell a story, is to do kind of the work ahead of time on like understanding like where they want to go with it, who's it for. And like, cause I think a lot of time, I know I just tried to rush into it. Like I had like a very rough idea, but I didn't know who it was for. I hadn't figured that piece out. And I think once I figured that out, things started clicking together for me.
Yeah, we have a handout. It's on our webpage. If it's not, I'll put it on the webpage right after this. But we have a couple handouts on the webpage. Webpage is thestoryninjas.com. And it basically is like, hey, think about your memoir or your nonfiction book like this, like, who are you serving? Because you're writing for the reader. You're not writing for yourself. The reader's selfish. The reader reads books because they want something from the book. Okay. And in some cases they want beautiful writing and they want great images. That's why they read poetry and some of this literary fiction, right? In some cases, in memoirs, they want to learn from your mistakes or your successes. And so that's why they're reading your book. And so you really have to identify your audience. And usually you're identifying a single audience member. We call it a SAM. We call him Sam when we're talking, like editors or story grid editors anyway are talking. We're like, hey, who's Sam? And everyone's like, Sam. So Sam is a single audience member. So who are you talking to? And the reason you have to identify that guy, that person, is because every chapter needs to address that guy. That's your super fan that you're talking, and he's interested with every chapter that you write in this book, this specific book. And he's the one that's going to say, this is a great book. It has this, this, and this, and you're going to love chapter 5. And it's not for everybody. It's not the book for everybody, but he's going to sell this book to people for different reasons because he's going to see that all the stuff that's in this that he loves. And we always compare it to Harry Potter, right? Harry Potter is one of the most well-read series in the world, but it was written for like 12-year-old boys. I mean, that's what it was written for. It was directed for 12-year-old boys. Girls are icky. We don't like dancing. They're stupid. And then of course the tropes are refuted in the book, obviously, because Hermione's amazing. But basically it was written for 12-year-old boys, but it was such a great book that the parents were reading it to the kids and like, this is great. And they recommend it to other people. And then, all the little girls love Hermione and blah, blah, blah. It just freaking snowballed. And then it became this super sensation. So you write a really good book for that super fan. And then the idea is that other people are going to read it because it'll spread out. And especially for nonfiction, it'll spread out and catch fire, ideally, right? But you have to write for that person. You have to write every chapter. I had a guy come to me with his memoir, and he was like, "Hey, I wrote my memoir. Can you look at it?" And I looked at it, and I was like, "Okay, who are you writing this for?" "Well, everyone will get something from it." I was like, "Well, this is your biography, and it's 20 years old. You were in the military 20 years ago, and you had an incredible career. But are you right? You can't say everybody." It's like, everyone will get something from it. It's like, yes, but Private Snuffy isn't going to read chapter 8 that you think he'll like. He's not going to read the first 7 chapters. He's going to pay $30 for a hardback to read chapter 7 and like, oh, it was a good chapter, but the rest of it doesn't, I don't really care about the rest of it. Sergeant Smith's not going to tune in for 3 chapters and then say that $30 book was great. General so-and-so, because he was a General so-and-so is not going to read this book because he's writing his own book. He doesn't want to know what you have to say. He's reached the pinnacle of it. So who are we writing this book for? And if you're writing it for new lieutenants about ethics and morality, let's do it. Let's do every chapter's like, what did you learn in this part of your military career that this guy can use? And let's direct that. Or if you wrote a story of your life for your family and friends to know what you went through, that's okay. Just know that it probably won't go viral, or, it's just people aren't going to go to the shelf and go, this is the book I was looking for, because it's a book about your life written for you and your family.
Yeah. And one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got, and I got it from a book, I think it not only applies to books, but applies to just writing articles, writing in general, is from Stephen Pressfield that says, "Nobody wants to read your shit." Which is the title of his book. And that's what he says. He's like, not your grandmother, not your dog, not your favorite aunt, like nobody. And he goes, and I mean, nobody wants to read your shit, not because they're bad people, not because they're mean, but because they're busy. And so I think that like when we write, especially when I first started writing, I was very, there was like a little bit of arrogance. Like people want to hear what I have to say. And, I can do a really long lead in to my point, all that stuff. And when you realize that nobody wants to read your shit and you're writing to a particular person, and so you want to respect that person's time, you really start kind of taking a step back and looking at what you've written, whether it be a book or an article, and what can I take out? What can I edit out to get this point across, and to fine tune it, to sharpen that point. And so I remember going through those discussions with you and Laura and hating. First of all, I just want to say this real quick. Like, this was not a fun process where I walked away with these sessions from Randy and Laura feeling good about myself. There was a lot of times, especially very early on, where I felt like I was paying you guys to make me mad. Like that's essentially what this was. But this was the beauty of it, is when you force yourself to answer those questions. Who am I writing for? And what do I want them to take away from this? It helps kind of point you. It becomes like a North Star for the rest of your project. And it just took me a couple months to figure that out.
Well, we felt the stress though too. We hang up and like, he's not calling back. I don't even know if he's going to pay that last bill, to tell you the truth. But Laura's super insightful, and really good at asking a lot of good questions. And then when it's military, I can usually dig into the military guy or girl and say, hey, I was there too, and this is how I felt, and maybe your message is this. And she's like, yeah, or he or she like, yeah. And then Laura's like, let's rephrase that like a ninja. And she'll go, what about if the message was this? And then everyone's like, that's it. So she's like, I mean, she's a great partner and I love her to death. But I mean, the military people that come to us, they just don't know how to articulate the message. They have like 16, they're very military, right? Because they've spent their whole career in the military. They have these are the things I want to accomplish with this book. And they give you like a 10, 15 bullet points. It's like, yeah, but what's the big one for the whole thing? It's like, no. 15 points. And 15 points of light. I was like, no. 1 point that covers the whole thing that has 15 sub points that all refer back to the one big point. No. 15 points of light.
Yeah. And I think too, like, so for example, we'll talk about mine, and the book title is Home: Navigating the Hero's Journey in Everyday Life. And I wrote it for the person who is at a point in their career where they felt like they've achieved everything that they wanted to, where they felt like they've accomplished all these goals, but now they felt like they were being called to go do something else, or weren't even sure they were being called to do something else. They just felt this like inner anxiety rising, that this inner uneasiness. And it's about exploring that and seeing where it would take them, using the hero's journey as a framework. But that's a very specific person. Like, I'm not talking to somebody at the beginning of their career. I'm not talking to somebody who's 30 or 40 years into it, who's very happy, who wakes up whistling as they're putting their combat boots on every morning. I'm talking to that individual, and I have this message that I want them to walk away with. And once I figured that out, to what you were talking about with, J.K. Rowling, like, people were writing me who were at different points of their career, different professions and different points of their life, and they were getting something out of it. But I had to narrow my message down to that particular person.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I remember when the light bulb went off because we were frustrated too. It's like, we can't figure out what his message is, and we got to figure this out. Let's get back to the drawing board. And then finally it worked. And we're like, okay, who's this guy? How old is this guy? What's this guy worried about? What's this guy reading about every day? He wakes up in the morning and thinks what? And we've been doing this for 5 or 6 years. And I want to say we're really good at it. We're really good at having a conversation on Zoom going, okay, tell me everything you want to do in this book. And then we'll figure it out.
And something else too, for listeners, that again, I'm not just talking about somebody who wants to write a book or write a memoir or tell their story, but somebody who just wants to write an article. One of the biggest things, one of the biggest, I guess, objections people throw up in these discussions is, well, I don't have enough time. And what's really interesting about this is I thought I had a lot of time before going into command, and then this unplanned deployment to Poland completely ruined that, as we were just getting started on the project. And then I went into squadron command, and I remember thinking, there is no way, Randy, that I'm going to be able to write this. And I think you just kept bothering me. You were like, hey, you've already paid the money, like, would you think you want to get something together soon? And I was like, I'll call you back later. Really busy right now. And then I started thinking about it in terms of not an entire book, but in small 600 to 700 word chunks. And I did that over the course of a year and a half through my weekly newsletter, the Sunday email. And it's amazing. Like, at the end of it, I had I have a 220 page book that I will eventually publish. And it's amazing. Like, that's the busiest I have ever been in my professional life. And I still was able to carve out time in the morning before work, just a little bit a day, maybe just a couple hundred words a day or 100 words a day, and produce that book. But, again, that back and forth with you guys. I remember it was like super late at night for you and I, because you're in Europe as well. And we would have these Zoom sessions. I was tired. I was beat down. But eventually, like, we were able to do that. So I think, for folks listening, if you're questioning the time commitment, if this is something you really want to do, you will make the time for it, which is what I did.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said. I mean, we have a couple people like you. They didn't tell me they wanted accountability, but they committed the money. And so am I going to give the money back, or am I just going to harass them? Well, I'd rather harass them. So, they didn't tell me to do this, but every week or so, I'm like, hey, man, I thought we were going to write a book together.
It works. And then, for me, doing it on that Sunday schedule, I love that quote from Lorne Michaels when he was interviewed about Saturday Night Live. He says, we don't go on because we're ready. We go on because it's 11:30 on Saturday night. And so every week I had to produce something. And, eventually, through the coaching and the conversations with you and Laura, we were able to build an arc where I was, 5 to 6 weeks out, so I could plan for training exercises and all that stuff. But yeah, I think it's a really important thing. And then the why too. I imagine this is a conversation you have a lot with veterans that you're working with. Like, why are you writing this book? Because I think on the surface, a lot, and I'm sure you've seen it a lot, is on the surface a lot of times we want to do something, and our motives aren't necessarily like very deep. It's like, I just want to say I wrote a book, or I just want to be able to say I've written a book. I want to say I'm a best-selling author. We have those images, but the actual process of going and doing it is really hard. And it's really, sometimes it's very emotionally draining. And so doing it like this was, for me, this was the book I had to write. Are these conversations that you have, like these why conversations with folks?
Every time. I mean, so like I said, the handout is like, who's this for? What's your why? Just like the book of the same title. What is your purpose? Like, there's your why, and then there's the purpose of the book. Like, what's the reader going to get out of it? And then, a lot of times, some of this can be decided by like thinking about your title ahead before you even write it. Like, some people underestimate the power of a title and a cover nowadays, because that, with social media, people buying off their phone, people buying off Kindle, like the first thing they're going to see is your cover and your title, and or even in the Facebook ads or whatever. It's just the cover and the title is like the 5 seconds that you're going to convince them to take a deeper look. And deciding on that title, so it's very clear what it is, whether it's a dragon book, a vampire book, a military memoir about Iraq, making that clear to the reader in those 2 to 3, 5 seconds max is super important. And so thinking about your title ahead of time and trying to figure out how you're going to grab the reader with an intriguing title that is clear about what you're writing about. So there's an example. I went to a book convention, right? And this guy's like, I spend, $500,000 a year on advertising, but I make $3.5 million a year on my books. And then he writes a series of fiction books. And I was like, but it took me a while to figure this out. I know that every single one of my Facebook ads, on TikTok, wherever social media I'm using, I have to be super specific, and the reader has to look at it and knitting. He has to know it's a book. He has to know it's a thriller book. He has to know that it's not a sexy book. So, I mean, I was writing this pirate series, and I found this picture of like a buxom pirate chick, a buxom woman with a lace-up kind of pirate suit, and they got a pirate hat and a flintlock pistol in one hand and one tucked in her belt. And, it said something about Pirates of the Caribbean meets Indiana Jones or something like that. But I didn't say it was a book. And I didn't, and I just didn't put all the details in there. And I pay per clicks. and people were clicking to the web page and going, "Oh, I thought it was a movie." And so that's 50% of the people that went there thought it was like a movie with whoever, Rebecca de Mornay or something in it or whatever. So that's we're kind of going off a topic, but the titles and the covers are like super important.
I'd like to introduce you to our newest partner, Roger Bank, a modern digital military bank built by military members for military members. Whether you're stationed stateside or overseas, Roger is designed to meet the unique needs of our men and women in uniform. I recently opened an account myself, and the process was incredibly smooth. It took less than 10 minutes from start to finish. Now, here's why I'm excited to partner with Roger. They offer high-yield checking and savings accounts, zero account fees, early payday, and automatic savings with Roundup Match. Their military-ready direct deposit form is even auto-populated and signed by the CEO, saving you time and hassle. Plus, you get free global ATM access, real person customer support, and they even offer accounts for service members as young as 17. Funds are FDIC insured through Citizens Bank of Edmond, so you can bank with confidence and peace of mind. Visit roger.bank to learn more. That's ROGER.bank. This episode is sponsored by LSI. LSI is a service-disabled veteran-owned small business founded by an Army leader and combat veteran focused on finding exquisite solutions to wicked problems and providing affordable, agile, and responsive services at the nexus of IT and logistics. The company was built by a team of dedicated, service-oriented leaders who have spent their professional careers operating inside complex, uncertain environments and missions across the federal government and private sector. LSI currently supports the Department of Defense, agencies across the federal government, and now offers its proven performance, support, and services to private industry by helping business leaders understand and modernize large, mission-critical environments while keeping operations running efficiently, teams aligned in resource, and accountability intact. LSI's work spans enterprise IT operations, global logistics support, cybersecurity, data analytics and literacy, smart automation, and decision support systems used every day by thousands of professionals. Across every engagement, LSI brings the practitioner's mindset shaped by service, execution under pressure, and the belief that good leadership shows up in how systems, people, and decisions actually perform. Learn more about them at logistics-sys.com. That's logistics-sys.com. Yeah, well, like I want to, I was like, again, share my experience. Like I developed I think I had the title pretty early on, and then I developed a cover, but it was almost like, I don't know, like a vision wall or something. Like he just gave me something to focus on and being like, all you have to do is finish this project. Here's what the end's going to look like. But then once I finished, I scrapped that, and the cover I have is amazing. Now, again, it's I want to describe it because it's still I'll describe it because it's still sitting in the Disney vault. But it's it's a compass with like the Google Home symbol in the middle of it. It looks like an ancient compass with that in the center because it's an ancient story applied to our modern lives. And I'm just really happy with it. And even that process was, I went through, you recommended to me go through getcovers.com, and I worked with artists for months. And just like writing the book, they continue to email me once a month asking, am I ready to check out? And I'm not yet, because I'm still holding on to this book. But I think it's a really important too, because you're talking about sales. And again, it goes back to the why. Like, why are you writing this thing? And I think a lot of times, and I believe this early on too, and now that I work with authors all the time and I know a lot more about the industry, just because you write something doesn't mean that it's going to get read. And actually the percentages of books that sell, I think it's like 90% of books, I could be a little off on this number, like don't sell more than 100 copies.
I think it's less. I think it's like 80% don't sell more than like 500 copies or something like that. But it's the numbers were a couple years old, so I don't know what the new numbers are. But there's like more books than ever now, so maybe it's a higher percent.
Yeah, so like just because you write something doesn't mean that it's going to be on a table at a Barnes and Noble, or it's going to be on the New York Times bestseller list, or even an Amazon bestseller list. And so again, I think it goes back to the purity of the idea of why are you writing this in the first place? And would you be okay if that one person you had in mind was an actual person and they're the only person that read it? Like it's something, again, it's something internal that, like, at least that's how I feel about it. Like, that you got to get this story out, and the way you do it is through writing.
Well, no, I mean, so like the handout has like 10 questions, and it probably take you 3 or 4 pages to write up to finish all the answers properly. And the you know, getting the deciding what you want from the book. Like, do you want your book in a brick and mortar, in the airport, in Barnes and Nobles? If that's your goal, then you're most likely going to have to do traditional publishing. Traditional publishing is long and tough. You have to write, probably most people write 20, 50 query letters, find an agent who's going to find a publisher for you. You find representation, and that guy's going to take a couple percentage points away from you. And then you go to publishing. The publishing companies can take anywhere from 50 to 85% of your royalties because they're going to move it to the finish line. But they're taking a bet on you because there's no guarantee, like we just discussed. Most books sell less than 500 copies. So there's no guarantee that they're going to make their money back. So they are taking a large percent of your royalties because they're taking a bet on you. If that's what you want to do, though, that's the way you have to go. If you want to go self-publishing, you'll make more money, but you're doing everything yourself. You're figuring out the cover and your marketing and your formatting and all that stuff. And you may have to contract pieces of it out because you're not smart enough to do it. But it'll in the long run, if you sell the same amount of copies, you'll probably make more money if you self-publish. And then you got the hybrids who are, you're paying ahead of time to give you all the pieces that the traditional publishing would do for you for free for the royalties. And then you're betting on yourself basically if you have the money. So those are the three options. Only one option really guarantees you're going to be in bookstores. It doesn't guarantee you're going to sell. It just guarantees that you'll be on a shelf somewhere. And then if no one buys it, then those books are going to sell them back to the publisher, and you're going to have to pay that money back.
Yeah, yeah. I've, for my green notebook, Know Thyself Before Changing Jobs, Cassie and I went hybrid publisher for that. We paid a couple $1,000s up front, and it ended up working out for us. Like it's the book has sold several thousand copies since we published it, I think 21. And then I recently last year went through, I created my own press, Green Notebook Press, and we published the Leaders 90-day notebook, to get people into the habit of daily journaling. And that's done like really well. I beat the 500, the 500 copies. I think it sold like a couple thousand as well. And so anyways, I just think it's such a fascinating process to learn. It's a whole new industry. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see? We'll stick with veterans since this is this audience, like veterans make when it comes to publishing or even writing.
I mean, they think that they want to get it done. So a lot of them go to hybrids, and hybrids are not all the same. Some of them charge a lot more than others for the same kind of work. So you really need to vet the hybrids. And if you're paying $10,000 to get your book out the door, just know you're probably not going to get that money back. The odds are against you. Okay, unless you got something super unique and they can figure out the marketing for it, the odds are you're not going to make $10,000 off your book. So you might want to kind of look at what you're spending on it, so that you can, or if you don't mind, you just want some people want to get the book out there. If it helps one person, they're happy. That's awesome. Some people want to make their money back. So you really got to kind of look at that. And so I think I've talked to people who went hybrid, paid literally $8,000 to $12,000, and they haven't made their money back, and they're very disappointed. And they didn't understand. And the reality of it is, you're ultimately going to be the marketeer, the musketeer, the marketeer for your book, because even if you go traditional publishing, who they make 85% of your royalties sometimes. After the first 2 weeks, when you sell the majority of your books, they got to move on to the next book. They only have a small marketing group within their publishing company that are focusing on the next book. All right. So they market the crap out of your book for 2 weeks, 3 weeks max, a little bit before, a little bit after the release date, and they're moving on. And then you are paying for Facebook ads out of your pocket, Amazon ads. You're dancing on Instagram, or you're dancing on TikTok if that's what you want to sell your book. You're on LinkedIn. I saw a guy the other day. He did a Sydney Sweeney, the Jean Sydney Sweeney with her feet kicked up in the air, and he photoshopped his book on top of her feet. He's like, Sydney Sweeney's got good genes, and this is a dang good book. So that's how and so it's kind of humorous, but basically you're ultimately going to be marketing your book, and they're going to get most of the profit if you're traditionally publishing. That's the truth. And you're going to be flying yourself or driving yourself to a book signing somewhere that you've organized and called the bookstore and said, "Hey, can I sign my books? I'm going to bring a box, or you can buy them, and you'll and I'll just get a cut," or something like that. But you're cutting the deal. You're doing it all. Or maybe your agent's helping you out, but the publishing company's done with you after the first couple weeks or month, because they got to move on. So that's the biggest problem, is they don't know what to do to market. Now there's a couple really, I've heard, I'm about to do one. There's a couple really good book launching programs out there. There's one that I heard. It's called Publishers Weekly. It's out of Canada. It's about $1,800. But if you have a book ready, a month out, you get with them, pay, you got $1,800. They're going to walk you through the process of, figuring out all the different pieces that are out there to get your book out there and known, and figure out your message and get the blurb right and all of that stuff. And I've had two guys tell me that they love it, and it really kind of reorganized their mind to think about this kind of stuff. And their books are doing pretty well. But you got to concentrate on selling your books, because as soon as you stop concentrating on selling your books, they stop selling, because people forget about it and move on, because there's a million books published every year, and then you have to figure out what your goals are. Once again, if you want it to be in Barnes and Noble, then that's a route. All right. If you want it to make the most money possible, and you don't mind doing the marketing yourself, that's a different route. If you want someone to market it, you're going to have to pay someone. So that's taken away from your proceeds if profit's part of your motivation. And you got to think about that, and that's a different route. So you have to figure out what your route is.
Yeah. And, one of the, going back to even like mainstream publishing, like I work with a lot of publicists, independent publicists. And so what you'll have is an author who publishes, say, Penguin Random House or Portfolio. And then, like you said, it's just a small team to help them market that book. Well, then they will pay somebody else, an outside firm, that'll send out the podcast pitches, do work out the bookstore sign, all those things for them. But that's also a lot of money. And so again, it's like, what is your goal with this project? And, it's a lot more work, I think. As I've been in this space now for years, working with publishers and now working with a mainstream author, it's a lot of work. And I think it goes back to why are you doing this? Because you're about to sign up for a pain train. But again, you get to have something in the end of it,
Yeah. No, I've had lots of authors come back and say, I had no idea. I thought writing it was the hardest part. But then when you get to the other side, especially, well, even if you get it traditional, you're still doing like I said, you're doing the marketing yourself. So no matter where you end up on the other side, no matter which route you go, you're going to do the marketing, or you're not going to sell books. So how do you do that? And how do you do it effectively? And how do you figure it out? And who do you believe? And who do you pay? And who do you talk to? And there's thousands of YouTube videos on this thing, right? And you can, and on how to use Facebook ads efficiently and how to use Amazon ads and how to use whatever. And there's programs that you can pay monthly that are going to do something for you. Whether it works or not depends on how you use it and who you believe. And you have to, it's a lot of trial and error. And sometimes it works for people and sometimes it doesn't. I met a guy at a convention a couple months ago, and he's like, it's all about knowing your audience, right? He writes cozy mysteries in northern Britain, in the Cotswolds.
I have no idea.
Yeah. Anyway, some of northern England, right? He writes cozy mysteries. He's like, I know my audience. I only advertise on Facebook because my audience is 40 plus housewives that are interested in northern England. And they're on Facebook. They're not on TikTok. They're not on Instagram. I mean, they may have an account, but that's where they're at. So that's where I advertise. And guess what? I have a series of books. I only have to advertise the first and the last because I advertise the hell out of the first because I want to get them interested in my series and read all the books. I advertise the last because, hey, I got a new book out. But I don't need to advertise the other 22 in the middle because either they're interested in the series and they're going to buy them all, or they know they've already read them and they want to know when the last book is. So that seems common sense, right? But when I started looking into this, I was like, oh, if I write a series of books, I got to advertise each one, and it's going to pay out this much money. You're actually, when you see a graph of advertising money, it actually goes down over time because you have he has 10,000 people that follow him on whatever social media. And he just says, I just released my new book, and he sells 10,000 copies like the next week. And he puts out a book every 6 months. So that's his income.
How important is it for folks that are interested in this? Like, maybe they're listening and they're like, okay, I think I do want to tell my story. I do think I want to, have Zoom calls with Randy and Laura and get angry with them. I'm serious. Like we're like laughing about it, but I wasn't laughing at the time. But like,
and you're like, I'm in charge of a battalion. And I know where you live. You live in the next country. I'm sending a battalion to get you.
I'm a battalion commander. Quit asking me these questions. But like, they're thinking about it, but they don't have a platform. They don't have a social media presence. They don't have a following. How important is that when we're talking about, actually getting your book out there?
Nowadays, it's not the do or die, but it's pretty important, especially if you want to start a brand. And if the sooner you can get them involved, the better. And then once you get your book out, you don't have to have a regular newsletter, but having a place they can sign up to get more news about your next book, that's just gold, right? If they liked your book and you never allowed them to follow you in some way so you can tell them when the next book's out, that's just lost sales. So if you write a memoir or a series of fiction books or whatever, and you plan on writing another book, by all means, just set something up that you can put at the end of the book and said, hey, if you'd like to follow me, follow me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram, follow me, sign up for my newsletter that I send out once a month about my new next book coming out. You don't have to write something every day, every week, as long as you got a way to reach those people when your next product comes out. And that's the only reason you're doing it. And of course, if you have a newsletter, you own all those emails. Every time you set up a news, if you own the emails, that's gold, right? When you start doing Instagram and they screw up the algorithm and you lose people, or TikTok gets sold, or you can't do it in certain countries, then you just lost those followers on TikTok because they didn't follow you anywhere else. But if you got the emails, at least for now, that means you got a way to communicate with them, and you can send your thing to them and say, hey, my next book's coming out. And at least those are guaranteed buys. They love your stuff already. Why give up your fan base?
Yeah, a couple points on that. I imagine like if you and I were having this conversation in 2006, it'd be like, and we'd be talking about picking your song for MySpace. and that's dead, or Prodigy or American Online, whatever, like. And so I actually I learned that lesson from Ryan Holiday in 2017. I was listening to him talk about it on a podcast, and that's when I started my monthly reading list newsletter. And I was like, I'll just recommend books just like he did. I'll recommend books until I'm ready to write one. And as soon as Cassie and I published My Green Notebook, said, "Hey, I published a book," and I think we sold like 1,000 copies just in the first like 15 days. Like it was awesome. Like I watched on like the charts, which I didn't understand. Like I didn't even realize like even the topic that you're publishing your book in, the genre, like it can be very specific. And I picked like the hardest one to compete in, which was like leadership book. And but I like all of a sudden saw us like shooting above like the Disney CEO when I did that. But that was 21. So for 4 years was putting out a monthly email about, here's some book recommendations, and it paid off. And then another point too is, where's your audience at? Like you were talking about the guy who writes cozy English novels, like his readership is on Facebook. And so you could find yourselves, and went through a period like this too, where I'm spending all this time on Twitter or X, I'm spending all this time on Instagram, I'm spending all this time on Facebook, and I'm spending all this time on LinkedIn. And now I've got it pretty drilled down to where Green Notebook has an audience in one location, myself and what I write has a completely different audience in a different location. And those two places are where I prioritize my efforts.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, that's why the first question we ask is, who's your reader? And we want you to make a profile. Like, who's your single audience member? What does he wakes up in the morning and what's his pain point? What's he worried about? And where does he get his news? And what books is he reading? What books has he read? And what movies does he like? And all of that is important to figuring out who this guy is and why he's your reader and what he's going to learn from your book.
Yeah, it's again, it's this is stuff you learn as you go. If somebody was wanting to sit down, well, I want to ask this because we keep alluding to it. So what is your typical session with you and Laura look like? Because people ask me, they're like, I was like, yeah, I used a book coach, and they're like, what? Like, what is that? What does that look like? So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So first thing we do is we do a free 30 minutes, and we ask you to fill out a questionnaire. You can go to my webpage and sign up, and it'll take you straight to the questionnaire. And at the end of the questionnaire, it'll have my calendar with Laura and my calendar synced, and you'll sign up on our calendar. And the questionnaire is like, what are we talking about? Do you want us to ghostwrite? Do you want us to book coach? Do you want us to edit your finished manuscript? What are you looking for? What service are you looking for? And then it goes into the questions specific to that. And then at the end, we have an idea of, if you have a book or an idea for the book, we ask you to describe it. People are like really cagey about that. Sometimes we're very specific, like, hey, tell us the beginning, the middle, and the end. Like what starts, him on his journey. How does it end? And they always want to hold something back. Like, and then a lot of adventures happen and it's really sneaky, but it doesn't tell us anything. And if we're going to be your editor, we got to say, well, this book, I don't know what this book's about. He didn't tell me anything. But anyway, that's us trying to tweak our questionnaire. Like, really, you can tell us the ending. We don't mind. So then we do a 30-minute, and we're like, tell us about your project, tell us about what your goals are, tell us about how long you've been working on this and how important it is to you, and then we'll get all the answers we need from that 30-minute conversation. Say, okay, sounds like we're gonna ghostwrite or book coach or edit or do a combination of the two, or maybe we do scene writing. We have a new thing that we've been doing for the last 6 months where we teach people how to write better scenes in their book, which is like the basis of a good book. You have a scene that captures the reader and brings them all the way through. So we'll have that 30-minute session. And then if you're going to do book coaching, which is what you're talking about here, we're going to send you our questionnaire, like the 8 questions that you're going to answer, like, who's the audience? what are we trying to tell the reader about life in general? Like where's the reader at the beginning of the book when he finds your book? What's his pain point and why is he going, oh, this book might have the answer? But I think I already know what it is. But then how are you gonna change his attitude, what he believes is true, or his method, the method he's been doing doesn't work as well as this method? And how are you going to do that? And what's the end going to look like? When he puts the book down, is like, Dad, that was a dang good book, super useful. I'm going to go to work right now. What is that? So for the nonfiction, that's kind of the evolution. For fiction, it's something different. It's like, what's the character's journey? How's the character going to change in the book? In nonfiction, the reader is the character. So how is the reader going to change when he reads the book? So we're going to give you that questionnaire, and then we're going to come back and do a 2-hour brainstorming. We're going to read everything you wrote in that questionnaire. We're going to have notes all over it on a Google Doc. And then we're going to come together and we're going to say, let's figure out what your book really is about, and what is the point, and what is the message to the reader. And then after those 2 hours, a lot of times we might even have an outline done. Depends on how concrete and honest the writer was with us on the thing. Sometimes they don't know the answers because they never thought about it before. Sometimes they're super clear, and it's easy. So it depends on where we're at when we get to that meeting, how that 2 hours goes. And then we have follow-on meetings until we get to an outline, if that's what they want to do, or they can take what we said and run with it on their own. The other part of that is we can do what we did with you, which is like, all right, let's talk about chapters. You write a chapter, send it to us. We'll try to make it more compelling, give you some ideas on how you might change it up, what's not clear. Send it back to you. You'll change it. You'll give it back. We'll give you a thumbs up, or we'll give you some more additions. And we have that's our book coaching thing. We do it chapter by chapter if that's the way you want to do it. We have one guy. We've done probably about 6 of these all the way through. A lot of times people just want to understand how to write better. So after 6 or 10 chapters, they're like, I got it. I understand what you're doing. I'm going to write the book. I'll come back and let you edit it after I finish it. And that's a lot cheaper way to go than pay us for the whole thing. And then we edit it too, right? But we had one guy, we've been working for him with, I think, 3 years since before I met you, Joe. And he's had 3 kids since we met him. Wow. His wife had 3 kids. And so he took breaks. I mean, that's why it took so long. He had a kid, and they had a kid, and then he spent 2 months, or a month before and 2 months after with his wife, and then he went back to work, and then he had another kid 9 months later, and it was pretty quick. But we're on short and final now. He's doing this final, review and edits, and then we're going to do one more review, and then he's going to publish it. But he's super happy with it. It's so different than the first version he gave us. He gave us like, hey, this is my memoir. And we're like, okay, what are we trying to do? And then we got to the bottom of it, and I'm like, have we done that? I don't think you've done that. He's like, I don't think I've done that either. I didn't know that's what I was doing. And then we helped him write it over 3 years. Now, it doesn't take everybody 3 years. I've ghostwritten people's memoirs in 6 months. I've ghostwritten some people's memoirs in 2 months, depending on how long they want it to be and what. So but that's for the discovery meeting. The discovery meeting is like, what do you want from us? And then whatever you want from us, we'll send you a battery of questions and start digging into it. So if you have a first draft, you'll pay us up front, and then we'll spend a month getting with a report on your first draft. If you want us book coaching month to month, we can do that. If you want a workshop to get an outline, we can do that. And if you want us to ghostwrite, then we usually sign up for 10 or 20 hours of interviews to get your life story. If it's a memoir, we've only ghostwritten 2 fiction books. Most of the time it's nonfiction or memoirs, and most of them are memoirs. And so it's just me and a Zoom call, asking really deep questions, trying to get to the bottom of things that you may never have thought about, why you did stuff, and coming to conclusions like, oh, did you ever think that you did that because back when you were in high school, this happened? He's like, I never made that connection before, but that makes a lot of sense. And maybe it's almost like therapy in a way. I got a book coming out. It's called The Last Hit. It's about a drug addiction, and it's coming out next week. And it's a book that I ghost wrote for this gentleman, Austin the Ramp. I'm really proud of that one. That's a good one. And then also Ben Owen was another. He's got a nonprofit called We Fight Monsters, where they're in Memphis, fighting the drug war on the streets of Memphis, and and he was just on Shawn Ryan actually. So he's amazing. Him and his wife are amazing, and their book just came out like 2 months ago. So that's how it works. Uh, I also got an internship for transitioning military people, where I teach them either to write or to edit, like I in my business, and that's like a 2 to 4 month internship as they're transitioning out of the military. It's a skill bridge. Did you do skill bridge when you got out?
I didn't have time though, so I had to. I gave up the guidon and got my DD 214. Like so
Yeah,
many. We could spend a whole episode unpacking that decision, right?
yeah.
But yeah, I believed in the hero's journey so much that I'm like, I'm going for it. So
Yeah, so skill bridge, if you don't know, and a lot of leaders should, when you go to your out processing classes, it's basically your commander, if when you're getting out, can give you 2 to 4 months to kind of intern with a company so that you can learn another skill or business for when you get out. I think Amazon and Microsoft are big players in this, and there's a lot of other companies that teach people jobs. There's no guarantee of getting hired, but they'll teach you. They can't pay you. You're getting your benefits and pay from the military, and then you're allowed 2 to 4 months to just spend time with them learning a new job, a new skill, and then maybe if you're the right person and they have an opening, they can hire you. I do the same thing. I do a one-on-one. If you want to write, I'll look at your writing. I'll give you some skills. I'll teach you skills to write, and we'll work one-on-one, talk once a week while you write for 2 months and get you on the right track to write your book as a transitioning service member. Or if you want to learn how to edit, like what I do, there's plenty of people who need editing for their books. And I'll teach you the story grid method, and I'll teach you the Save the Cat method and all these other methods that I learned and how to integrate them and how to edit people's books. My dream though, Joe, I don't know if I'll do this. I'm going to talk to a lawyer next month. So if people want to follow me, that'd be great. But I'm trying to get a nonprofit together. Like we need another veteran nonprofit. But I just talked to a major last night about, she just went through this horrible water contamination problem at a military base. And she's got this crazy story that she wants to tell and make people aware of. And she doesn't have any money, right? She's got 2 kids, and she's getting put out of the military for her beliefs. And so I don't want to tell her story until she's ready to tell it. But, my goal would be to find these people that have these stories that need to be told, and, help them bring it to light, and then have the charity that I found pay either me or other military editors that I've trained to help them write their story for them, or help them, mentor them to write the story. But I got the skill bridge thing. I'm doing 15 or so hours a week for free mentoring veterans. And I probably can't take too many more at this time. I mean, I got probably 10 more signing in over Christmas and stuff. And so I'll max out pretty soon. I probably got 5 or 6 more openings. But if I could get this nonprofit off the ground, then I could actually help people write their books and not just train them to write, because there's actually a couple programs like that. So that's my goal. Also, I just started a YouTube live Monday 2:30 on my YouTube channel, Military Writers Academy, and I'm just going to do a Q&A. So it's going to be live. One person shows up, 50 people show up, 5 people show up, whatever, just like you're asking questions here. I just want to see if I know there's people out there who have questions. So hopefully people show up, and just like, we're going to have a theme for each one. We'll talk 5 or 10 minutes, me and Dan Pace, and then open it up for whatever questions you got. And so we'll see if anyone comes to those.
That's awesome. I want to, in a minute, I want to ask you about, some book recommendations for folks getting into writing. But just for, for those listening, who are still listening at this point, because again, I recognize that, writing a book or writing is very niche, even within the niche, like veteran community. But like the process with me. So, I remember a couple different instances where one, I would send you something, you and Laura something, maybe 600 words. And the questions that you asked ended up generating another 2,000, 4,000 words out of it. And even helped shape the trajectory of the book in a direction I wasn't originally planning to go with it. So I think that's, just that again, it's almost like it's like was this extraction that you were doing through questions, which I thought was amazing, because I don't think I would have got there on my own. And then I remember another one, I had submitted it to you guys. And what I was talking about was how a younger version of ourselves typically signs up for these careers. The 20-year-old you going into the Rangers, the 20-year-old me going into, the armor community. And then we hold ourselves to what this 20-year-old signed up for, even in our 30s, even in our 40s. And that's what I was trying to get to. But the way I had phrased it, I think you guys would come back and you're like, what we're hearing is you're telling people to leave their families. And I was like, no, 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 that's not what I was getting at. And so again, we like refined and got to that
Right.
message. And it was crazy. I think I told you this, but like a month after I finished the series and, I published it over a year and a half through the Sunday newsletter, somebody actually wrote me to say that like it motivated them to like get out of a toxic marriage and everything like that. And I was like, whoa, like that wasn't the intent. But I'm really glad I changed that one chapter. But anyways, but it was just a really good process. And even now, that I think it's been a year and a half since we wrapped that up. Maybe, yeah, it's like a year and a half. I now like, even when I write now, like some of the same lessons that we discussed over the Zoom session, or that I remember seeing in the comments on that Google Doc from you and Laura, like I'm still like those voices are still in the back of my head as I'm writing. I'm still asking those questions of myself today. So I think, when we're talking about spending money, a lot of times we spend money and it's one and done. But I really saw this as an investment in my ability as a writer, because, now we finished in spring of 24. It's now going into the fall of 25. And I am now like, I'm writing even more and even deeper stuff. Because I've been able to take those lessons and bring them forward with me.
I'm glad we could help. I don't know if I could say that everyone does what we do. I mean, there's a lot of people that do manuscript edits, and then there's a lot of people that just do ghostwriting. And I don't know if there's a lot of crossover. I don't actually know what the status of that is. And then the book coaching thing, there's a couple courses out there. But I think this Laura and I combination is just works for us with all the clients we've worked with. No one's ever said, you know what, Randy didn't bring a lot to the table. You could have charged me less, and Laura could have just showed up. That would have been great.
No, yeah. Oh man, yeah. Like it's funny. Like there were so many great conversations in there. Yeah, where Laura made me mad and you were good, and then vice versa. Where I was on the same sheet with Laura, not you. So it was a really good combo package. On writing books or just writing in general, what are some books that you would recommend folks?
All right. Well, so my foundation book where I learned how to do the editing. So the story grid was originally written as the subtitle is What Good Editors Know. Okay. And so it's about how to self-edit your book after you finish the first one. And then you can also use that as a way to create your book. You can answer the questions ahead of time instead of looking at your book in retrospect and trying to find the answers to the question and say, oh, these are where the holes are. you can actually answer the questions ahead of time when you create the book, so you don't have to ideally do so many revisions. It's a lot. I would say that the book is 15 years old at least now, and it's written in a way that I think it intentionally was written to want you to know more. Okay. For instance, it suggests that there is certain obligatory scenes for each genre of fiction book, but it doesn't tell you what those obligatory scenes are in that book. Now, 15 years ago, after it was written, Shawn got together with Tim, his business partner, to develop the Story Grid universe, which is what they have now. And now they have a huge, like thousands of, I want to say thousands, maybe it's just hundreds, but they got a lot of YouTube videos on their YouTube channel that talks about all these different pieces of the Story Grid. So anything you don't understand completely from reading the book, go to YouTube and they'll explain it to you. They also have their own courses now to walk you through their processes, or you can just sign up with me and I'll explain it to you. So I think the Story Grid's a really good method. Save the Cat writes a novel is also a go-to, and I actually have a blog post where I compare the two, and they're super similar. Like each one has like 15 different key points, like for the hero's journey, and so I have a blog post where I compare Save the Cat and Story Grid. And then I actually have another one I'm about to write, which compares all three together and how they're very similar and they all kind of line up. But they just call it, each one has a little bit of a nuance to it that just makes your book editing or your book writing a little bit better, I think, if you kind of overlap the three. So those, and then of course, Vogler's The Writer's Journey, which is based off of the
Hero's Journey.
Yeah, the journey. Yeah. So those three are probably the primary foundation books. And then what's her name? Weidman?
It's Elisa something. There was a book you recommended to me to read, and I'm actually like looking behind me right now trying to find it. But it was a story something. Man.
Oh, you're talking about, do you mind if I get something from my shelf
Go
here?
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're talking about Lisa, you're talking about Lisa Cron.
Yes.
So Lisa Cron wrote Writing for Story, which is a freaking great book, and Story Genius.
Wired
so those
for
are
Story. I thought that was amazing.
These are really good. And then I can't find the other one that I was talking about. But the other one is there's a woman, I think her name's Wiedemann. Where is it? Yeah, well, we'll have to put it. They can ask me on Monday.
Yeah, there you go.
Weiland. Okay, K.M. Weiland. K.M. Weiland has a 12-book series for writers, and it talks about theme and character arcs, and she's really insightful. It's super good. So K.M. Weiland, Meiland. And so and I learned a lot from that. So those are my big books for book series. The Lisa Cron ones, the Weiland books, Story Grid, Save the Cat, writes a novel, because Save the Cat was originally for plays, but or movies. And then the Vogler, The Writer's Journey. Those are probably my key ones. If you read those, you probably know almost as much as I do.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, Randy. And for folks that are still with us, at this point in the show, if you're interested in learning more, and you want to, use Randy's or, use Randy, but you want to see what it produces, you can shoot me an email at joe@fromthegreennotebook.com. I will send you a copy of Home Navigating the Hero's Journey, and you can see how this very rough idea became this 220-page thing that I am so proud of. And, for me, particularly, the reason I'm holding off on publishing it is I'm working on another project now and I want to wait. And I think it would be even more amazing, 3 to 4 or 5 years down the road to release it. Because it would actually be a testament that me following the hero's journey actually worked out for me. years later, not just in the moment. And I'm, on the side of the road panhandling next year. So I'm going to hold off. But if you're interested, hit me an email, joe@fromthegreennotebook.com. I'll send you a copy of it. Digitally, you can look through it. But I highly recommend using Randy and Laura if you have a book idea. Just that process really helped pull it out of me. So on that, if people want to learn more about you, Randy, and more about your work, where are all the places they can find you?
Yeah, so militaryeditor.com is one of my web pages, or the Story Ninjas, which is the name of my company.com, thestoryninjas.com. And then on, like I said, YouTube Lives, we're going to start Monday at 2:30 Eastern from now on for the foreseeable future, and see how that pans out. And that's at the Writers Academy, Military Writers Academy, excuse me. So, and they can just search my name. They'll probably find all that stuff.
Awesome. Well, Randy, thanks for your time today, man. It's a pleasure. It was good me asking you questions this time instead of you asking me questions and me getting angry. It was just and very appreciative. I know I've said it to you so many times, but I am so appreciative of the time that you and Laura spent with me and what came of it. I am so proud of that project, and it wouldn't have come to fruition if you wouldn't have been hounding me for that like 8-month period before I finally sat down and wrote.
You say it like it's a bad thing, but what I did was like, hey man, just send me something and I'll edit for you. I mean, I did a bunch of, I started out doing like some free stuff, right? I think I did.
Yeah, it was good. It was just like, hey, you signed up for this, you paid. Why don't just get started? Just do one little thing. Just write a word, send me a word, and I'll edit that one word. And and then it became 40,000 words. So that was awesome. Well, again, Randy, thank you so much.
Yep, no problem, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you again for listening to another episode of From the Green Notebook podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us gain visibility and the opportunity to help more people on their leadership journey. Also, make sure you check out our website at www.fromthegreennotebook.com. There, you can listen to past episodes, read leadership articles written by military leaders from around the world. You can sign up for our monthly reading list email where you can learn about new books that are coming out, and our Sunday reflection email that comes out every Sunday morning. Is really short. It's a 2-minute read, but I guarantee you it's going to start your week off on the right foot. Finally, make sure you follow us on Twitter at FTGN Notebook, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for From the Green Notebook. Again, thank you so much for coming on this journey with us. I am humbled by the opportunity to learn these lessons alongside you. So please join us next week for another episode of From the Green Notebook, where we're going to help you lead with the best version of yourself.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my